Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker, and we have a fun show for you today. We've got a great guest, and I'll bring him in just a few minutes. But, of course, as you know, I like to start with a little bit of a monologue on what I'm seeing in the industry. And I've been having a lot of fun using LinkedIn as my testing ground to see what everyone's interested in at any given time. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you've probably seen that I've scaled up the volume of content, especially written content that I've posted on LinkedIn. And when I see something get a lot of engagement or conversation, in most cases, that means I'll probably take that topic and use it as one of the topics that I discuss in my monologue at the beginning of the show. And it's been really helpful for me to kind of take a pulse on what's important to everybody right now. And one of the posts that I made on LinkedIn recently was about the value of sports tourism in the destination marketing industry. And it's funny, I think I struck a chord with a lot of my sports tourism connections, but also destination marketing professionals who may not be on the sports side also took a lot of interest in it. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about sports tourism because I think it's one of the biggest missed opportunities in the destination marketing space. If you think about what our job is and what we as destination marketers are working so hard to do, we're spending a large amount of time, effort, budget, and media on getting visitors to the destination. Well, sports tourism is really interesting because if you book a tournament, the amount of people that are going to come to the destination for this sports tournament or sporting event or whatever sports-related item it is, you get a large amount of people that show up in market as a result. So from an efficiency standpoint, the amount of marketing dollars spent compared to the number of rooms booked, the return on investment is incredible. In fact, most destinations are running the sports tourism department independent of the destination marketing organization, and those budgets are living almost completely separately. What the result of that is most destinations are leveraging sports as more of a logistical planning organization than as a marketing or I guess demand generation tool. They're getting the sporting events and then they're leveraging their expertise to say, okay, here's how we're going to place all the people at the tournament. Here's the room nights or the hotels that we're going to have people staying in. And it's really more of a logistical role. And I would love to see that flip a little bit. I'd love to see a lot more collaboration between the marketing team and the sports team, because I think we're leaving millions of dollars of opportunity on the table by not working closer together between marketing and sports. And so when you think about what a sporting event is and what it means to a destination, we're talking a group that, for example, if it's an annual tournament that comes in, we're talking a group of people that will come back annually for multiple years. We spend so much money trying to manufacture demand for the destination, especially on the leisure side. Sports brings guaranteed return visitation if you've got the same tournament multiple years, especially if people are playing on the same team multiple years. And not only that, they bring the entire family and sometimes extended family because they want to watch their loved ones play in these sporting events. So you're talking, you may have 2 or 3 generations of travelers coming to attend this sporting event. They spend more money because they have to feed more people. They stay longer because the tournament goes over multiple days, and it provides a ton of economic value to the destination. And so, you know, one of the stats that I saw from the Sports ETA annual published report is that sport families spend $3,000 to $5,000 a year when they come into a market for a sporting event, which, man, that's up 46% since 2019. And these are repeat travelers that you get into your destination. The other thing that I think is really, really important, I've talked a lot about the importance of content-first marketing strategies and how it's important to leverage content to build a community. And then once you've built a community around your product, then you can influence commerce because people expect more value than just the fact that you pay to be in front of them for them to transact with you. And so I love sports tourism because every single sporting event provides the hero's journey. Right? There's the heartbreak of loss. There's the just magnificence of achievement that happens when someone wins the game. There's unlikely victories. There's people who overcame massive adversity in order to win. And so these are all these stories that are happening every time you have a sporting event in your destination, but nobody's capturing the story. Nobody's doing that. The sporting event comes, it happens, it leaves, and the marketing team is not capitalizing on the content factory that is the event that came to town. And what I would do on a marketing team, if I was thinking about trying to maximize the opportunity for sporting events coming to town, the first thing I would offer, because I'm bidding against several other destinations to get the sporting events to come to town, I would offer that we will provide the content capture and distribution services for the event and share all that content with the event so the event can use it to promote to other teams and players and things like that in the future. And it's not a huge lift for the destination that already has a content budget to then go capture the content that's happening at the event. Maybe you put together a sizzle reel. Maybe you put together some sort of episodic content asset. Whatever it is, both organizations are going to get massive benefit. And then now, if you think about the experience people have, they come, they have an amazing time, but over time people forget. They've got a lot going on. They've got busy lives. The content can be used to help them remember the feelings that they had during the time that they were there and incentivize them to want to come back and visit. And this is one of the few components. I've heard the argument before that it's really difficult to build a community around a destination because people may not go to the same place every single year, so the destination becomes less important to them after they visit. Well, a sporting event is completely different. Not only will they come back annually, but they may recognize that they didn't get to experience the entire destination because they were playing the sporting event the whole time, and maybe they'll book a future trip with their family. And so there's a huge opportunity in sports tourism that I think is really critical. We don't have in a lot of destinations a sports tourism problem. What we actually have is a collaboration problem between marketing and the sports organization. And I would really love to see sporting commissions and destination marketing organizations work so much closer together to maximize the opportunity of sporting events, because from a dollar efficiency standpoint, I'm not sure there's anything better in the destination marketing space. And with that, I want to bring in our guest. His name is Adam Geller, and Adam runs tourism in Page, Arizona. Adam, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Adam.
So this is going to get a little confusing with Adam and Adam here on the show, but we'll do the best that we can. I'd love to understand, Adam, from your perspective, as you hear kind of what I went through with sports tourism. For one, your response to what I said, and two, I'd love to hear if and how that's something you're leveraging in Page.
Well, I would say not so much in Page, but back when I worked for City of Lancaster, we had a minor league baseball team. And, you know, as you were talking about this, it definitely kind of rang a bell because we didn't really have a good collaboration. They did their own thing and the city did their thing. And so that was really a missed opportunity now that I think about it. In fact, we ended up losing that minor league team, and the city owned the stadium. So we were kind of in the position of trying to figure out what do we do now with this stadium. And so we started doing events and concerts and things there after the minor league team left. But I think, you know, kind of having that cooperation and using that as a content generator for tourism could have been a really effective way. Of course, hindsight is always 20/20, but yeah.
Yeah, the thing that scares me is the "if you build it, they will come" mentality. I think Field of Dreams, while that was true for Field of Dreams, and for those that don't know that reference, that's a movie that came out in the 90s, I believe, where he built a baseball field and all these players came from the past. And so anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole plot of Field of Dreams today on the episode, but you know, what it's created is a situation where we use that saying to believe that if we build something, then the revenue is going to come. And in a lot of cases, that may be true, but why take it for granted? Why not connect the marketing and the sporting events, the sporting facilities and opportunities related to sports? I mean, that's billions and billions of dollars left on the table industry-wide, and I'd love to see that corrected. Adam, I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in Page.
Sure. So it kind of all started with my first job once I graduated college, I got my degree in electronic engineering, and I was looking for something to do. And I started working for a small startup podcast studio, funny enough. And this was back in 2005. So really early in the
Very early.
format's timeline, probably too early. Um, However, so I did that for about a year, and then I ended up finding something that was a little closer to my heart, which was consumer electronics. So I worked for a company called Geffen for over 10 years, and they had been around for a while. But when I had started with them, they were experiencing a period of massive growth that coincided with the consumer adoption of HD TV. And in fact, they were the first adopter of the HDMI port when it originally came out. And so they ended up developing a lot of the distribution technology that we have today. In fact, the what's left of the company still does video distribution at Times Square and for the Super Bowl and in pretty much every Walmart store across the country. Anyways, they got bought out by another corporation, and the writing was kind of on the wall. I was in a 50,000 square foot building, and there was only 10 employees there. They had kept taking things out and getting rid of people, and they the whole time said everything was fine, don't worry, but kind of saw what was coming. So, after working in tech, I think I'm really glad that I had that private sector experience when it comes to marketing, because you control the whole funnel and you actually can see what works, and that equates to sales. And in the private sector, you really need that to prove your worth.
Yeah.
And I think in tourism, it's a little bit different. It's a little muddy, and sometimes it's not so easy to really see your output. But I'm really glad that I had that experience to see what actually does something and how hard it is to really move the needle sometimes. And I think that applies to DMO marketing as well. So I got into municipal work shortly after I left Geffen, and I worked for the city of Lancaster as a marketing coordinator. So not only did we have the minor league stadium, but being a big city, we had a performing arts center, a nature preserve, just a lot of city facilities, and that gave me an opportunity to really do things that I never really saw myself doing before that. So, such as creating a holiday special, producing a holiday special that was virtual during COVID, and then also doing a lot of the messaging around the pandemic and some of the overall safety messaging surrounding that time. After about 4 years in Lancaster, I decided that I really wanted to get more into tourism specifically. And so at that time, I accepted a job with the city of Kingman, Arizona.
Yeah.
And so I started doing a tourism coordinator role there. And I just really fell in love with telling the story of a community and all of the opportunity there. And a lot of my skills from the tech sector translated over really well, including graphic design and coding, video production. And so I just found that tourism was a great niche for me and was something that I just really enjoyed doing. But coming from that technical background, I really had a different focus, I would say, and more looking at a data-driven approach and trying to really prove that ROI on some of the ad spend and different ad partners that we were utilizing. So I learned quite a bit, and some of it is a little counter to some of the industry standards. And I think, you get that with any industry that's changing as rapidly as this. Things that were true a year ago might not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, totally. So how did you go then from Kingman to Page?
So after about a year in Kingman, I felt that, I was doing really good there, creating a lot of great content, and in a way, I really had this desire to uh, work for a destination that was really on the map in terms of tourism, and something to really have the opportunity to try a lot of the ideas that I had. And so this job came up in the city of Page, and Page had been on my radar for a couple of years, just with Horseshoe Bend and a lot of the beautiful Instagram photos. And so I took a chance, and I think, the timing was just right, and I landed the job here. That was about 6 months ago, actually. So I'm still relatively new to the role. But just working on a lot of really exciting things. And honestly, this has really been my dream, is to, really be at the reins of a DMO, and to kind of reinvent the wheel in a lot of ways compared to how things were done previously.
Yeah, so Page is an interesting place for me for a lot of reasons. So first of all, I've been down to Lake Powell and had experiences at Lake Powell before. I've taken my wife and my kids to Horseshoe Bend, and my kids got way too close to the edge there and scared the heck out of me, and I'm sure you guys deal with a lot of that. The thing about Page that I think is fascinating is it's one of the few destinations where the assets that it represents may have higher brand value than the city itself. And that's not meant to say that Page doesn't have brand value, but Horseshoe Bend is internationally iconic. And Lake Powell is like, outside of the ocean, maybe the place where people want to take boats more than any other place in the country, right? And so, I mean, the brand value of the assets that you represent are internationally recognized. And my concern with that, and the thing that I think is probably a challenge in your role, is how do I make sure that Page gets its relevance elevated along with those assets and is associated with those assets, as opposed to those assets just standing on their own, because Page obviously is where the hotels are, where people are going to stay if they're going to come to those assets. So we want to make sure they understand that, and that we're not losing hotel room nights to Kanab up in Utah or Flagstaff in Arizona, but that you actually get the Page brand to capture the value that those assets provide.
So your assumptions there are exactly what I was thinking when I had first started. And there really is a disconnect. We have visitors that come to Horseshoe Bend that don't even know that Lake Powell exists. We get a lot of visitors that don't even come to Page itself, the town on top of the mesa, and just stick to Walmart and the hotels that are at the bottom. So how do we bring awareness that we do have this flourishing town with breweries and shops and restaurants, and start to bring traffic up the hill? So there definitely is a disconnect, and there's also a language barrier too. 65 to 70% of our visitors are international, from what we can tell, and so there really is a disconnect and a barrier to explain some of what we all have to offer here in Page.
Sorry, but you've outlined another unique challenge that I want to make sure our audience understands. If 65 to 70% of your visitation is international, there's no way from a paid media perspective you're ever going to be able to reach enough of them with the budget that Page has to make a dent in that target audience. I mean, your audience is the world, and I don't know that there's any corporation well, I shouldn't say that. There's plenty of corporations that have the money to reach that far, but very few, and most definitely not a small destination in the corner of Arizona. The websites in our industry are built for the past, not the future. And we've got a major, major problem with that. These are glorified directories that have been entirely designed to deliver bottom of funnel metrics, clicks, and impressions to the stakeholders that we serve. But we all know that at some point that house of cards is going to come crashing down. And the purpose of a DMO is to inspire travel. We lost that vision along the way when we were building these websites, and the pendulum has got to swing back. We've built, in conjunction with a company called Destination Core, a very unique content-first website product that's built specifically to help engage and inspire visitors to book a trip to the destination. So if your website is at all a pain point for you, make sure you hit me up, adam@thebrandrevolt.com. We'll take a look at what you've got going on. And of course, this only makes sense for people who are building genuine inspirational content for their audiences. And if you are, you need a content-first CMS and website that attracts visitation and inspires visitation to your destination. So hit me up, adam@thebrandrevolt.com.
That's correct. Just to move the needle in terms of international marketing is very difficult. But there are some low-hanging fruit items that we can kind of address, and one of those is the language barrier. And also mapping too. A lot of people don't realize if you're coming here from China, our communities have entirely different names. So Page is actually called Horseshoe Bay, which would be the literal translation. So dealing with some of these differences and just routing visitors on how to get to all of our destinations that we have can be a challenge. Something so simple can actually become really complicated. And so sometimes improving mapping technology and translations on your website and really kind of tracking that visitor experience from those international guests and seeing where the bottlenecks are, just addressing those can actually be really worthwhile.
Well, and I know one of the things that you mentioned on our previous call that you did that was an effort to help get people up the hill, right, from the hotels and Walmart, is to create a Bandwango pass that incentivized them to go to other parts of the city, right, that they might not have found on their own. So I'd love to have you talk maybe a little bit about how you've leveraged that Bandwango pass and plan to leverage more to get better visitor distribution.
So the Bandwango partnership began when I, coming from Kingman, knowing about the Route 66 Centennial, Highway 89, which is what takes you from Flagstaff to Page, intersects with Route 66. And so I thought, what a great way to drive some of that Centennial traffic up to Page to create this gamified passport that's called Mother Road to the Wonder Road. And so Highway 89 actually has a lot of similarities to Route 66. It once connected all the way from Mexico to Canada, and it was called the Wonder Road because it actually went through more national parks than any other route in the U.S. And a lot of the original segments are still there. Some of the bypasses are very similar to Route 66 in that they have these kind of abandoned and forgotten attractions and towns along the way. And it just doesn't have the recognition that Route 66 has. So when you're coming to Page from Flagstaff, you go by so many interesting relics, from abandoned trading posts to filming locations to little Colorado River overlooks, museums. There's just so much. And there's also little bits and segments of the old road and decommissioned bridges. So, a lot of what made Route 66 so fascinating also exists on 89. And so just to gamify that mission, sometimes the journey to your destination is just as relevant as the destination itself. And so we created this passport that is gamified, it's narrated, and it will take you through some of the most interesting locations along this route that otherwise you might just pass by. So there really isn't a lot of information on some of these destinations, and it took a lot of research to really put that together.
Great.
And so we started with that one, and we really liked the Bandwango platform. In fact, the state is using it for the Arizona 250 passport as well, which is a gamified pass that goes all over Arizona, and you can visit destinations and earn prizes. And so that's kind of where we got the idea. And so after we developed the Highway 89 passport, we were thinking we wanted something more page specific. So now we're developing one called 48 Hours in Page, and it's going to incentivize people to increase their stay. And so in order to do enough of the activities, you would pretty much need to stay 2 nights, and then you can pick up your prizes here in Page. So we have plans for additional passports as well. Page is often considered the center of the Grand Circle adventure. So, part of what we've really done is to own that Grand Circle adventure and become the authoritative source online. So we developed an interactive Grand Circle map that includes all of the official DMO websites and information sources. It includes clickable itineraries per segment, and it's something that you can print out. It's something that you can use on a mobile device, and it's really unique, and there really wasn't anything like that out there before. And so, when Page becomes the center of that, we kind of own that whole experience, and that increases our website traffic considerably, 10% just from that map alone.
No way.
To our Visit Page AC website. So sometimes having that unique information that you can't find online really adds a lot of value. And even if it might not specifically involve your destination, the traffic that it provides to your site, just getting people on there and looking around, can really provide a meaningful lift.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like about the interactive map that you built is instead of thinking in terms of just my geographical market, you said, what does the visitor need? And once you recognize what the visitor needed, you built an interactive map that was built with the needs of the consumer in mind. And yes, it highlights other destinations. It's not limited just to the geographical bounds of your destination, but it provides enough value to the visitor where they're going to come to you and see you as the authority on the Grand Circle, which for those that are listening, the Grand Circle, which is these 5 national parks that you can go to, all in a very, close proximity, that is internationally known. Or is it 6? Is it 6, Adam? Or is it 5?
Well, actually, it's more than just the national parks. There's all sorts of different attraction and recreation areas, but the bulk of it would be Zion, Bryce Canyon, Arches, Canyonlands, Mesa Verde, and Monument Valley for the most part.
And then, of course, within that is all the Page assets like, or does Lake Powell and Horseshoe Bend, does that fall within one of the ones you mentioned?
So that would be Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, and it is on our map and definitely the focus of our itinerary that we've provided on there.
So here's what I love about that from a competitive perspective is if you allow another destination to be the center point of the Grand Circle, you may even get left off because they're going to go through their priorities of what they want people to visit, but you get to set the tone as the one that built the Grand Circle map on your site. Clearly, it's resonating with the audience if you've got a 10% lift in your website traffic as a result. I just think it's a really kind of unique and interesting way to make sure that you're in a conversation that you previously couldn't control.
Exactly. And I say that our map is very page-centric because some Grand Circle maps actually avoid Page and you bypass it. So, by creating the authoritative map, we put Page right in the center and make sure that all of our attractions are highlighted. And I think next steps for this is we are going to develop another digital passport that will be the entire Grand Circle. And in order to get your prize, you'll have to come to Page to pick it up. So it's kind of forcing us to really be a part of that experience.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about, okay, we built these passes. how are you getting the word out to people that come to town? How are you making sure they know that they can go get these passes, leverage these passes for, the different offers that you have available with it? Sometimes I see a disconnect because a destination will create all these passes, but do a poor job of distributing those passes to the people that come to town.
Yeah, that was initially my concern is marketing something like this. We had this other platform. It was a digital itinerary builder that used AI technology, and you would enter in all the types of destinations you would want to see, and it was really neat. We still have it on our site, but just marketing it was so difficult. We noticed that the cost per click was about $1 just to get someone to use this thing. And so even though the functionality was great, the flip side of that is trying to promote that and getting people to use it was really difficult. So I think with gamified passports, you do have the prize aspect, which always helps to incentivize people. But also you can make it very specific to certain destinations. And with Page, Horseshoe Bend, and Antelope Canyon, these destinations are so iconic and photogenic that really helps to push that out there. And so for the digital passport, they're receiving something that is no cost to them, and they can actually get prizes. So that definitely helps drive down that cost per click.
Yeah.
Aside from social media marketing, we also have it in our visitor guides, and then also doing some traditional print ads for that as well.
Shifting gears a little bit, when you and I had our previous conversation, we talked about content and the value of content, especially when for a small destination with a small budget, it's difficult to make a drop in the bucket with paid media. So you're focused on creating some really valuable content. One of the things that you mentioned that you created was a historical research related piece of content to give people access to information that maybe even they can't find with AI. And so I'd love to have you share a little bit about what your strategy's been around that content and the content you created.
So I don't think a lot of people realize how much has really been lost transitioning from books and just common knowledge to the internet. And some of the modest estimates of that are we're only capturing about 20% of the information that's out there online. And so, AI is pulling from this limited data pool. And there are other sources of information. I don't know if you've ever done a historical post about something online, and the people that come out in the comments to add more context to that is really fascinating. And there's just so much information that has been lost. And so digging some of that up and doing the research on your own can really be valuable because one, with search algorithms, if you're the only source that has this content, then you're going to get those clicks over anyone else. So an example of this is when I worked in city of Kingman, I was researching Route 466, which intersected in Kingman at Route 66 and went all the way to Morro Bay, California. And so I created this blog about all the historical information that I could find on 466 and tried to retrace the segments that were still left and created an itinerary so that you could actually travel along a lot of these portions. And it was actually really interesting because it went from Kingman over the Hoover Dam when the bridge was on top of the dam, and then it became Fremont Street in Las Vegas, and then it became the Strip in Las Vegas Boulevard. So you would pass by all of these historic sites. And then as it went through Bakersfield and then to the Central Coast, you just take these beautiful forgotten roads. And it was something that shared a lot of the similarities with Route 66, but kind of a different adventure. And so becoming that definitive source on 466, that became one of the most popular pages on the Kingman's DMO website. So, and I did the same thing with a small town that's 30 minutes outside of Kingman called Yucca, Arizona. There was very little information online about this community, and it had been around since the late 1800s and had a lot of history behind it. And so researching some of that history and kind of putting a DMO spin on it and getting that out there, again, it became one of the most popular pages on the site. And so, that's earned traffic there that you don't have to pay for. And you look at what that traffic is doing, and the dwell times are really good. They're checking out your whole site. They're engaged with it. So that kind of strategy can actually be extremely valuable for a DMO.
Yeah, I love the projects that you mentioned there for a couple of reasons. When we talk about DMOs need to add value in order for them to stay relevant, well, one of the best ways to make sure that you're adding value is to provide something that no one else can. And when you look at the internet, and you said that we're now using essentially 20% of the available information because of the transition from books to the internet, that means that there's so much opportunity for DMOs to actually be a source of information that people can't find anywhere else. And so by doing that research, which obviously takes a lot of work and it's a process, but by doing that research and educating yourself, you create a differentiator even from any other source on the internet. And suddenly what you're doing also is a service just to history in general by helping transition some of the lost information from the books to the internet, and now it's available to the general public as well, right? And so I think historical content may be one of the larger opportunities for DMOs if they'll go through the research. And then, of course, how does that content manifest itself? Well, it may be a long-form blog series. It may be a video series. It may be even something that you build into a documentary or whatever it is. The whole point is you can't know how to manifest the content until you've researched and understood what content is available to create and whether or not it's going to be interesting to the consumer. So I just think it's a great project that you've worked on in each of the markets that you've been in, it sounds like. I think it's a great takeaway for a lot of the destinations that might be listening. Anything you want to add to that, Adam?
So, once you generate that content, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because you can spin that into social media posts and short form videos. In the 466 blog, I made a brief mention about this mystery road called the Palmdale Barstow Road, and a video blogger picked up on that and did a 45-minute YouTube video and actually gave credit to explorekingman.com, saying, hey, I was reading this article about 466 and I found this little tidbit of information and went down this whole rabbit hole, and that video got 2 million views. So absolutely free marketing when you have those types of things occur.
Yep. And this is why I recommend to destinations across the country, take some of your media budget, put it into content creation, because in today's attention economy, the ability for people to find interesting content is so much easier than it's ever been before with the algorithmic format of serving content that's on so many of these platforms. If you create something valuable, people will find it. And like you said, Adam, 2 million views on a video, what would it cost you to get 2 million views on a paid advertisement? Not only that, is it even going to be interesting to them? Well, that's a big question, and you don't know the answer to that until you've actually spent the money. Whereas when you build content, you see what's interesting, and then you put paid behind it, and that's just a completely different way to look at it. So I think it's great advice. Adam, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. If you had one kind of key takeaway that if nobody remembers anything else from this episode, what do you want them to take away? What would that be?
I would say take ownership of your destination and become that definitive source for everything around you, not only your exact destination itself. I would say that there's just so much value in being that source. And then once AI picks up on that information. It's your information that gets propagated into whatever platforms the future might hold.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. Adam, this has been an excellent conversation. Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much, Adam.
And thanks everybody for listening. Please don't worry if you got confused between the two Adams and which Adam was talking and was it Adam saying that or was it Adam saying that? You'll figure it out. It'll be okay. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. It helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Adam. Thanks everybody and have a great week. Guys, I'm pretty excited. I think I've struck a nerve with something, and we've been talking a lot. You've heard on this show talking about the need for people to go from tactician to strategist. That's an effort that we've been working on inside of Brand Revolt for a long time, and one of the components of that is recognizing that the traditional agency of record engagement isn't exactly what we want to be chasing because everybody's kind of chasing the same thing. We've found a really interesting success point with conversations where I've gone to destinations and I've said, hey, what's the unique challenge that you've wanted to solve for a long time, but your AOR hasn't had the chance to get to it, or that you and your team haven't had a chance to get to it? And it's resulted in some of the most fun and intellectually challenging conversations that I've had so far. We've had one destination that's got us building a LinkedIn strategy. Another destination asked for a corporate partnerships strategy. Another one asked us to build a Reddit strategy. And in exploring these different strategies that need to be developed, especially with all the changes that are happening in the world, there's not a destination out there that doesn't have one or two things that they haven't been able to tackle yet. And for us as an organization at Brand Revolt, we really are finding a lot of joy and excitement in the opportunity to tackle some of these problems and blaze trails that haven't yet been blazed. And so I wanted to invite all of you, if there's that nagging issue, that thing you've wanted to get to for a couple of years, but you just haven't had time to solve it, or if there's something that maybe one of your directors or C-level people have been asking you to solve, but it's been on your list, you haven't been able to get to it, or maybe an agency hasn't gotten you what you needed yet with that specific thing, give us a narrow strategy project opportunity, and I'm extremely confident that my team can really help dig into that without having to turn over the keys of the entire marketing plan to this agency. Instead, we can really tackle that narrow strategy for you and make sure that it's something that's effective, solves the problem, and can be built upon for the future. If this sounds interesting to you, hit me up at adam@thebrandrevolt.com. I would love to talk to you. I know that every single destination has something like this that they just need to get to, and I think we can help. adam@thebrandrevolt.com.